Okay, so the little tricks to make the unit circle quiz go faster and to get these trig values kind of set in your brain. First of all, it's only going to be over sine and cosine because those are the ones I'm interested in because you can figure out the other 4 trig functions by taking quotients or reciprocals of those. So I just want you to know sine and cosine. So the first thing you have to do is remember where the angles are. Well, you should know you start zeros over here, and if you go all the way around, that's 2 pi. So if you only go halfway around, that would just be 1 pi or pi. And then so halfway between 0 and pi is pi over 2. And halfway between pi and 2 pi, well, halfway between 1 and 2 is 1.5 or 3 halves. So 3 pi over 2. Okay, and then the other denominators you need to know are 6, 4, and 3. And I mentioned before the 6's are close to the x. So in each quadrant, the angle closest to the x is going to have a 6 in the denominator. So you just have to figure out what goes in the numerator. Well, this is the very first one, so it's just pi over 6. And this one, now you just want to compare them to what it's close to. Well, pi, that's just 1 pi, and 1 is 6 over 6. So right before it would be 5 pi over 6. Oops. Pi over 6. And then right after 1 would be 7 over 6. And then this one, well, it's right before 2, which is 12, 6. So this would be 11 pi over 6. Okay, and then the 4's are in the middle. 1/4 is halfway between 0 and 1/2, right? This is 0.5, halfway between is 0.25. So the 4's are right in the middle. Okay, so, and then we want to figure out, well, what's the numerator? Well, the first one is the first pi over 4 we ever get, so that's just 1 pi over 4. And then halfway between 1/2 and 1 is 3/4, so this would be 3 pi over 4. And halfway between 1 and 1.5 would be 1.25. 1 1/4 is 5/4. And halfway between 1.5 and 2 is 1.75, or 1 3/4, which is 7/4. So notice here that the pi over 4's all just have odd numerators, 1, 3, 5, and 7. Okay, and then the other denominators you need to know are the ones with 3's, and they're close to the y's. Well, maybe not that close, but all I care about is in relation to if it's closer to the x or the y. Okay, well, this is the first one with 3 in the denominator, so it's just 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3. This one would be 3 pi over 3, so the next one is 4 pi over 3, and then 5 pi over 3. Okay, so now we've labeled all of the important angles. And so what I mentioned is that really all you should have to do is know cosine and sine for the first quadrant angles. So start at 0, pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, and pi over 2. Okay, and so cosine of 0, so think of this point. Cosine goes with the x-coordinate. Well, this is on the unit circle. I haven't gone up at all, so the y-coordinate is 0, that's sine. And cosine is we're 1 unit over, so the x is 1. And by the time we get up to pi over 2, they've kind of switched here. I haven't gone left or right at all, I'm right on the y-axis. So the x is 0, and the y is I've gone up 1. So now it's these middle angles that we're concerned with. They all have a 2 in the denominator. Okay, And notice that cosine starts at 1 and ends at 0, so cosine like counts down, right? So, and there are 3 left, so it just goes 3, 2, 1. And root 1 is just 1. And sine starts small and ends big, so sine counts up, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so, and all I'm going to test you on are sine and cosine. So let me actually bring up a copy of the quiz, and I'll come right back. Okay, so when you bring it up, it will say, for this quiz, you're not going to be typing in the square root like I have for these values, have the square roots. So we're just going to type the letter R for radical or R for root. So if you wanted to do square root of 2 over 2, you would just do R2 over 2. And so the over is just the slash key or backslash or whatever right at the bottom of your keyboard. It also has a question mark on it. So that key is what you use to get the slash. So I'll give you, and it's only going to be angles from 0 to 2 pi. They're all going to be in radians, and it's only sine and cosine. So the thing is here, when we use reference angles here, what you should just be looking at first is what's the denominator? Is it 6, 4, 3, or 2? Or if it's 0 or 2 pi, I guess then you should know if it's an even multiple of pi, it's over on the right. If it's an odd multiple of pi, it's on the left. Because think, if you kept going around, we stopped at 2 pi, and the quiz stops at 2 pi. But if you did keep going, halfway around the circle is pi. So if this is 2 pi and you go another pi, this would be 3 pi. And then 2 times around is 4 pi, and then 5 pi. So all of the even multiples are over here, and the odd multiples are there. So say it says cosine of 7 pi over 4. Well, automatically, you know it's going to either be plus or minus root 2 over 2. Anything that has a 4 in it, the cosine, the number part of it is always the same. It's just the quadrant that determines whether it's plus or minus. And so you have to remember that since the 6's are closer to the x-axis, and so I said, the way I remember that is 6 ends in x, so it's close to the x. If it's closer to the x-axis than the y-axis, that means the x is bigger. So let's see if I get rid of this. Pi over 4 was right in the middle, so that's where the x and y are the same. So that's kind of like, that should be the easiest one to remember. Pi over 4, they're both root 2 over 2. That's where they meet in the middle, right? So, and then so if it's pi over 4, they're both root 2 over 2. At pi over 6 and pi over 3, they switch. One of them has root 3 and one of them has 1. Well, think of which number is bigger, root 3 or 1. So square root of 3 is the bigger one. So if it has a 6 in the denominator, the x is bigger, so that has the root 3. The sign is smaller, so that just has the 1. Now let me bring up the quiz here. And so I mentioned on the little document that I either gave out or posted, depending on which class you're in, that if you have a small screen, I kind of have a small screen on my laptop, it's faster to use the tab key to go from one problem to the next than it is to use the scroll bar over here. It took me a little, I still got it done in 2 minutes using the scroll bar, but it went a lot more quickly if I used the tab key. So click on start. And then all of the questions come up right away. So 7 pi over 6. 6 means it's close to the x, so the y coordinate is smaller, so it's plus or minus a half. And so 7, it's taking me way longer than I would do this in my head, but I want to tell you what I'm thinking. So automatically I see 6, and I know sine is either plus or minus a half. Now I have to know what quadrant it's in. Well, 7 pi over 6, that 7/6 is bigger than 1. So it's past pi, which means it's in the bottom half of the circle, so sine is negative, so negative 1/2. Then when I look at, well, I know it's either plus or minus root 2 over 2 because it has a 4 in the denominator. 7/4 is bigger than 1, so the bottom half of the circle. So negative R2 over 2. And then tab, tab, tab. So, oh, again, 6 in the denominator, so plus or minus a half. And 5/6 is smaller than 1, so it's in the top half of the circle. Tab, tab, tab. Okay, so root 2 over 2, 5/4 is bigger than 1, so negative R2 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. Oh, I'm getting a lot of these. 3/4 is smaller than 1, so top half of the circle, R2 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. Wow, 11 pi over 6, so it's plus or minus a half. 11/6 is bigger than 1, so negative 1/2. Tab, tab, tab. 2 pi over 3. Okay, so the 3's are closer to the y, so the y is bigger, sign is y, and so it's plus or minus root 3 over 2, and 2/3 is smaller than 1. So it's in the top half of the circle, so the y is positive, root 3 over 2. Okay, and pi over 3, it's the exact same thing, r3 over 2, same reference angle. 5 pi over 3, same reference angle, but 5/3 is bigger than 1, so negative r3 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. Sine of pi, that's right on the x-axis, 0. 3 pi over 2, that's the y-axis, in the bottom half, negative 1. Tab, tab, tab. Pi over 4, r2 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. Okay, 4 pi over 3, 4/3 is bigger than 1, bottom half, negative. Negative r3 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. Pi over 2, top of the circle, 1. Cosine of 5 pi over 4. 4 plus or minus root 2 over 2. And that's just past, 5/4 is just past 1, so that's quadrant 3. So negative r2 over 2. Tab, tab, tab. 2 pi, that's at the start. Cosine is 1. 3 pi over 4. So plus or minus r2 over root 2 over 2. And that's in quadrant 2. It's just before pi. Cosine of 0 is 1. Tab, tab, tab. 5 pi over 6 is x. So the x is bigger, so this is plus or minus root 3 over 2. Okay, so it says my time is exceeded there, but that's because I was talking the whole time. And I still have only 10 questions left. I did almost 20 questions talking the whole time. So I'm going to go through again and show you that it should be really quick. So it may submit it automatically. Let's see what happens. Since this is, I'm just doing the practice quiz, I think I don't have the time limit enforced because I want you to be able to finish. But on the one that says for a grade, the time is enforced. So let me actually do another one and show you really how I would do it without talking. So I'll still do the practice quiz. But you should start going through all of these things in your head. You first want to compare the fraction in front of the pi to 1. That especially helps with the sign, because if it's smaller than 1, it's in the top half, sign is positive. If it's bigger than 1, it's in the bottom half, sign is negative. Cosine, if it's right before 1 or right after 1, then it's negative. But if it's closer to 0 or 2, then it's positive, because then that determines the left and right half of the circle. Okay. Okay. So see, I still had a minute left. And I got 30 out of 30. So that it should, I don't expect you to do it as fast as I do it, but I did it in less than a minute and I'm giving you 3 minutes. So I do expect you to be able to do it in 3 times the time I take. Okay.